Thanks for staying with us on What Now. We have Victor High now to continue our conversation on the elections to hold in Uganda. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you, and I can assure you that the Nigerian government has not stopped the internet in Nigeria.
All right. Well, that was just the next line of conversation I was going to open with you, because it looks like a play, yes. One of the usual playbook now. The first things yes. we find in this election when someone is seeking for another term, and haven't changed the constitution to allow them to perpetrate themselves in office. One of the things you find is that they cut off internet. I mean, what do you make of that usual playbook from not just African leaders, but even just leaders around the world now?
Okay, let me explain how it works to you. You know how military coups were in those days? When before GSM, the first thing the coup plotters will do is go to then what we call NITEL at the time, the Nigerian Telecommunication Agency, and then they will cut off the telephone lines, okay? So that there is no communication whatsoever. That seems to be the same that the civilian coup plotters are perpetrating against their citizens. And the reason for doing that is for instance, if votes are counted at various polling units, polling agents are able to share this information, and if they win, it is easy to collate the numbers. It is easy to collect the numbers and then and then share them. Even if they are not official, but people have an idea who's leading and all that. And so because this I don't know what to use word, despots or whatever, these leaders don't want any of that for whatever reason. The first thing they do is like what those coup plotters do. They cut off the communication line. In this case, social media. And so there's no communication whatsoever. People don't know what's happening. If there are killings anywhere, if they're doing anything untoward anywhere, it cannot be shared. And so they're able to maintain control over the population. It's sad, but that seems to be playing out again and again, and that's what we're seeing playing out this time again in Uganda.
And there's a comment or statement, attributed to he said it, I understand he said it on live television to one of the presidential aides. And I just want to read out that comment. And he said, don't even think that Simon Biabakama, who is the head of the Electoral Commission, would announce Bobby Wine. President Museveni, who is on the chair, will remain on the chair. Never think that Museveni would leave power through voting. No, 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 don't waste our time. He was heard saying that, and his name is Kisa Kiamukama. Just the sheer audacity of that. I want to get what you make of that.
You recall I said, I hope the internet was working at the time I said it, that what happens usually is, this is not just about the leaders, it's about the people, what in Nigeria are called the cabal, the people around power who benefit. It's like in a game of chess, you have the king. It's not really about the king. The king's movements are limited. But the people around the king is where the problem is. Many of them want to continue to perpetuate themselves in power. Because as soon as the king leaves power, nothing more for any of them. That means all of them will go home and then a new regime takes over and then installs new people. So what that person that spoke, that Peter, what he simply said there, he just spoke the mind of what you might call the cabal around them, those who sit around power, who want to perpetuate the leaders. If you look at what happened in Cameroon, the Cameroonian leader, is closer to 100 than anything else, okay? He's been there for so long. The man is tired, and honestly, left to him, he will go home and rest. But no, these people need to prop him up, because the minute he leaves, someone takes over, they know they are no longer in power. So they will do everything to perpetuate that leader in power, whether it is in his interest or not, whether he wants to stay in power or not. And so what you heard Peter say there in Uganda is the same thing. How can you, an election has not taken place, you are being preemptive, saying that no matter what happens, okay, that Bobby Wine should not even consider that. Nobody should even think about any other announcement, about anybody being announced president under than Museveni. What does that tell you? They've already written the result sheet. no matter what the outcome is, Museveni will be returned unopposed. That's what it simply means.
Mm. And the head of the electoral body who he was speaking about says he has received threats warning him against declaring certain presidential candidates winners of Thursday's election. His name is Simon Biabakama. And he said he would not be intimidated by such threats from senior state officials whom he did not name. But I know that we find men of integrity within systems, but I mean, what does it have the, I'm looking for the right word now, does it have the enablement to be able to push through in this election? And what does that tell you about what's at stake in this particular election?
Well, like I said, everything is at stake for those around power, not necessarily the man in power, okay? So there's one thing, you see, the head of that electoral commission has an opportunity to make history. He can decide to be on the part of, if you're on the side of the people, history will be very, very kind to you. Okay? But if he's not, then it will be sad. I hope he has the courage, if indeed any member of the opposition wins, I hope he has the courage to make the announcement.
But beyond courage, Mr. Ohai, the word I was looking for earlier was institutional protection. Does it have that institutional protection to be able to pull through, even in the face of courage?
He cannot have institutional protection, obviously. He only needs moral courage to do the right thing. Who is the institution? The government, okay? And the government has just spoken that no other person can be announced. So what institutional protection does he have? In Africa, you don't talk about true separation of powers. The government is, the executive is the judiciary. The executive is the legislature. That's what it is, you know? So he cannot be guaranteed institutional protection, but he can do one thing. If he has the courage to make that announcement, and the internet is open when he's making that announcement, the people will stand by him. It doesn't matter what they do. If they lock him up, the people will go right out unless they kill him outrightly. And if they kill him, obviously the international community will know what has happened. I hope he has the courage to do the right thing, if indeed the opposition wins.
And let's look at the opposition in this election. Again, Bobi Wine, who is the major challenger in this election, as you know, as at the last election as well. He is 43 years old. He's a pop star turned politician. He's seeking to unseat Museveni for the second time. He finished runner-up in 2021 polls. But again, he might have the popularity, but can he really, does he have the numbers to unseat Museveni?
Well, I'll have to say one of two things. First, apart from perpetuating himself, you have to give it to Museveni, in the sense that there's been stability, but for this electoral manipulation that they're doing. Uganda is relatively stable. We have to give it to them. The economy is not doing very bad. So to a very large extent, the country is not like that bad. If you leave them on their own, to me personally, I don't think that Bobi Wine has what it takes to win a Museveni. What I do not support is Museveni perpetuating himself, altering constitution, going for the 7th time, and going into his 5th decade as a leader. That to me is not right. Let the election hold normally. Let the people's voice, be respected, and then that makes him a respected leader. But when you attempt to manipulate the system, that's what I have a problem with. But then again, remember what I said to you. It's not always about the leader. It's usually about the people around the office who want to continue to perpetuate themselves, because a changing regime means an end to their own reign. And then, what you find with many of these people is just, an era of what I call plutocracy. They just go there, loot state resources for their own selfish end. The leader is there to protect them, and it just provides that covering for them. But I like Bobi Wine's consistency and his persistence, and I think with each election he's getting more and more followers. And if anything, with what the government is doing right now, I think the government will need more support. And if anything, he would gain more. But whether that is really enough indeed and in reality to give him the needed votes is what I'm not sure of. I wish it was a two-horse race. I would then say that Bobby Wine has a great chance. But
And
when you have
interesting, absolutely, sorry to interrupt you, but interesting you mentioned that, because I was going to ask you if that is not the challenge, from the opposition themselves, when you have 6 other candidates who perhaps have pockets of supporters. The idea that you cannot have a unified opposition, isn't that already that sort of ambition to unseat Museveni, isn't it already dead on arrival?
Well, it could be, but it's not necessarily an argument, and the reason is that if you're one of the 8, so it doesn't make a difference. But because everyone has a right to contest constitutionally, they all have a right to contest. But as we know, it's difficult to get a coalition in this part of the world. If they could come together, perhaps, and agree on Bobby Wine's candidacy, then perhaps they stand a better chance. But that, unfortunately, is not the case right now, and we'll have to wait and see what happens.
And just speaking generally, this election kicks off Africa's 2026 election calendar. We've started, we're at it. Other elections will be holding in the year. There's Benin Republic, there's Djibouti, Central African Republic, there's Ethiopia as well. I mean, is this what we should also expect? Or do you think that we're going to have outliers in this election cycle on the continent?
Benin might have the same problem you're having in Uganda, I'm afraid. Djibouti, Ethiopia does not have, they may have their problems with, what do you call it now, Eritrea and all that, but as a democracy, they have remained stable, and I don't think they're going to have a problem. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the other elections, but this is obviously a bad start. Benin, I can predict straight ahead, is going to follow the path of Uganda, but the others might just be, the others you have mentioned, might just be better.
Are we on the continent, because you spoke earlier to democracy, really, because a lot of people have been saying, look, maybe we should find our own brand or kind of democracy. I always find that argument funny. Perhaps maybe you agree, but are we really a continent that is practicing democracy? Or are we just at a place where, let's just switch to civilian rule and hold elections every 4, 5, 6, 7 years, depends on the term limits?
No, see, democracy remains the best form of government. I would argue that any day, any time. What the problem is, it's not the system of government, it's the people. Okay? We refuse to let democracy thrive, which means we refuse to let the voice of the people speak. And that's where the problem is. What you find right now is civilian regimes who are each election year are conducting coups, civilian coups against the populace. That's what we have. They do not have a respect for the voice of the people. They have no respect for the wishes of the people, and which is what you see play out. What you have seen play out is playing out right now in Uganda. What we have seen play out in Tanzania. What we have seen play out in Cameroon, and many of these other countries on the continent. So democracy by itself is not a problem. The problem is we as a people. The primitive quest for power and wanting power by whatever means necessary, is where the problem is.
And just to follow up on that, when you say a democracy doesn't have a problem, it's Africa. But just looking at how, again, you are right, democracy doesn't have a problem. But just looking at how it is practiced here, do you agree with the conversation around finding our own brand of democracy, or let's just stick with what democracy actually is meant to be, even though we're not even getting that particular one right?
Okay, let me explain something. You see, if we say what we want to do for an African form of democracy, unless you're talking about monarchy, where, okay, you live with only one king who continues to rule your country forever. It's happening in the Arab world. Maybe it gives them a bit of stability, but don't forget that we are not a homogeneous society, we're heterogeneous, okay? So within Nigeria, we have different ethnic groups. And then there are the religious factors as well, which you cannot also ignore. If you look at the UK, for instance, it works for them because they speak the same language they have the same religion. You go to Switzerland, you go to Netherlands, and all of that. It works because they have something that unifies all of them, binds all of them together. You go to the United States, it's the same thing. It's not so in Africa. We are blessed with too many languages, with too many cultures, too many traditions. So there's no, I mean, if you look at Nigeria, for instance, the Igbos are very Republican in nature. They don't practice. Kingship is not something that they rule by. You know, it's new to me. Relatively speaking, it's not for them. It's not like okay, one king you come rules over the people. You know, in the north it's easier because yes, you put one emir there, everybody bows. Whatever he says, that's it. You know, so it's different. So, but what we can all agree on is all of us together. If we come and say, okay, this is what we want to do, then we agree. The Cantonese system the system in Switzerland perhaps may work. I don't know if it can work in Nigeria, where you know the presidency is rotated, you know, and so. But even at that, when you are rotating, look at what happens in our traditional kingship here, where you pick kings from different families. When it comes to this family, you see all of them fighting. Sometimes another family may want to take the turn of the other family. You can't rule out the human factor. So at the end of the day, I think that Western democracy as it is right now is something that has evolved over time. And what it simply means is everybody comes together, you say what you want to do for us. If we all agree that you're the one, you go in there, and after a certain number of years, you leave. Right. But what we do is we keep manipulating the constitution. And let me say this before I leave. A popular leader, I don't want to mention names here, or what some leaders do is.
So I'm giving you like about 4 or 5 seconds more, Mr. High, because we have to go.
Okay. Well, let me just leave it at that, but just know that there's a human factor. There will always be that. Even the most advanced democracies, people will find a way to manipulate if they can to perpetuate themselves.
Thank you so much for your time, as always. You know, it's always a pleasure to have you analyze and break down these issues for us around the continent. African Affairs analyst Victor High.